Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Which Game Should Win Game of the Year. Bit of a role reversal today because I, Gamers Editor-in-Chief Stacey Henley, will be your host, and I'm joined instead by our usual host, Eric Switzer.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Today we will be discussing the, I would say, frontrunner for the crown, the little robot that everybody loves, Astro Bot. It's a fun little bouncy platformer. It's not really the sort of game that usually gets nominated for Game of the Year, and yet I think it's the favourite. Eric, why should it win?
Yeah, it's interesting. You say it's the favorite. I think a lot of people agree with you. But also, you also said it's not the kind of game that usually wins Game of the Year, and I think that's really interesting. When we look at these other contenders, you've got Elden Ring, obviously. Elden Ring won Game of the Year.
Previously has one, yeah.
Yep, you've got really crunchy RPGs in Metaphor and Final Fantasy Rebirth, and we have crunchy RPGs, Dragon Age 1, Baldur's Gate 3. Yep. And then Black Myth would fit into the like Sekiro, God of War, big AAA action thing. And so the ones that don't really fit are Astro Bot and Balatro. And we talked about Balatro. I love Balatro. I find it to be a bit of a diversion of a game, not a particularly deep experience. And I don't think a lot of people expect it to win either. It's more of a very nice to be nominated situation for Balatro. But Astro, I feel like the closest we have is probably It Takes Two.
It Takes Two, yeah.
And I also think It Takes Two sort of won in a year when it didn't have a lot of competition. I think that's probably fair to say.
And it beat Ratchet and Clank, which is even closer to Astro Bot. So
That's
even
true.
in the year with the Astro Bot-iest win, the Astro Bot-iest game on the podium didn't win it.
Interesting comparison for me personally because they're both family-friendly platformers. I played Astro Bot much like I played It Takes Two with my partner, trading the controller back and forth. And she doesn't play games. In fact, it probably was It Takes Two was the last game that we played together. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge about Astro is that compared to these other games, Astro is very much a game for everyone, whereas the rest of these are games for gamers. And games for gamers are typically what does win. It's these really intense, demanding. There's an element of price versus hours of entertainment factor here. I mean, like Baldur's Gate, Elden Ring, these are all like massive time-consuming games, and Astro Bot is not that at all. Astro Bot is it harkens back to the Wii era when you had grandma and grandpa up on their feet playing Wii Sports. Like it's that kind of it is a much more rare product than it ought to be in gaming. Like it really a lot of people compare it to like Nintendo or call it like PlayStation's Mario or whatever.
Nintendo game,
yeah, PlayStation's Nintendo game, and it's more than just like the aesthetic or the platformer gameplay. It's about the way that it is so inclusive, that it's like an experience that can be shared outside of our hardcore gamer bubble. And I think that's my best argument for why it deserves to win. It is the most inclusive of the games on this list.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's up for best family, a category I know that you absolutely loathe because most of those aren't family games. They're not games you can play with your family. They're just family-friendly experiences.
Mario Party wins by default
because it's the only game that's actually a family game.
Yeah.
But with it being, I guess, an atypical sort of candidate for Game of the Year, why do you think it is the favourite? Because you're right, every other game really, other than Balatro, which is probably the least favourite, probably ranked 6th, I would say.
Yeah.
They all have much clearer, this game has won Game of the Year before.
Right.
Why is it the frontrunner if it's not a normal game? Is it something to do with this year? Is it the other games there? Or is it something about Astro Bot?
It's this year, and it was the timing. When Astro Bot came out in, was it August?
August, late August.
When,
early September?
Yeah, when it came out, everybody immediately went, oop, Game of the Year, there it is, because we hadn't seen it yet. I mean, Elden Ring, we'll debate, shouldn't even be in this list.
Sure.
Necessarily. But then these other ones, like Black Myth is the lowest Metacritic rated Game of the Year nominee ever. Like that wasn't a unanimous victory for gaming.
And came at around the same time.
And Rebirth, not universally beloved. Metaphor came out after. Balatro, another game no one ever expected to be here. So when Astro came out, everybody went, finally, we have our Game of the Year winner. There it is. 10 out of 10s across the board. This is the Game of the Year. And I think it was pretty easy to stick with that, because unless you like JRPGs and spent 100 hours playing Metaphor, then you played Astro for 12 hours, decided it was the best game of the year, and nothing has changed your mind since August. And we don't really have that every year, where it's like, here's the winner in August, and we know it for the rest of the year.
No, I think it definitely took a lot of people by surprise. See, I reviewed it, and I gave it a perfect score. I was kind of unsure of whether people would, because I love classic platformers. Yeah. I wasn't really sure if I was just kind of blinded by that, and maybe it was just kind of an okay game. So we haven't really had a great platformer in, like, Mario Odyssey, I'd say, was the last one. But I think one of the things people loved about it was just the variety and the sorts of gameplay that we had. I think we probably need to like talk about not just the environment around Astro Bot and why it's there, but just the game itself, because it's not just a fun game to play with people. There's lots of things you could point to with that you could play with people who don't really play games. There's something really special in Astro Bot that I think appeals to hardcore gamers as well. And I think that's what makes it a standout.
The fingerprints on Astro Bot are so evident. You feel that this is such a deeply curated experience the entire time you're playing. It is just so perfectly paced. It is so filled with great ideas. Every moment of that game is like perfect, you know? And it's so hard to find any faults in it because it just like uses its time so well. It respects your time as a player, and it doesn't overstay its welcome with anything that it throws at you. There's no level that everyone thinks is terrible because they're all great.
Splashing sprint, but yes. That's just too hard. It's a good level, it's just difficult. No, you're right.
And it's a game that you feel like you have to 100% it to complete it. You know, it doesn't feel like any of the optional stuff is optional because it's all made for you. It feels like you're missing out if you don't 100% complete this game because like so much care was put into it. You know, there's a lot of like, I think about Crash 4. Crash 4 is a miserable game to 100%.
Yes. Oh my god, yes. You gotta do all the levels backwards and upside down and black and white.
Yeah, and none of it feels handmade. It all just feels like obligatory stuffing. Whereas this, like none of it is superfluous. None of it is extra or time filler, or none of it's there for the people that want it. You know what I mean? Like the people that can't get enough Astro. It's not like that. It's all part of the experience that you're meant to have. And that's part of what makes it so special.
What do you make of the PlayStation cameos? 'Cause I think before launch, they proved to be quite controversial. I think there was cynical people like myself kind of felt like they were using them as kind of cheap advertising, and it was just going to be a little bit of a PlayStation showing off all the cool things that they have with not a lot of substance. Does Astro Bot back that up, or is that how does that kind of factor into its reception? I guess the nostalgia of it.
Yeah, I saw that argument, and I'm about as cynical as they come.
Yeah.
I love bashing corporations. I never felt like this was PlayStation celebrating itself. I felt like this was Team Asobi, a small group of developers celebrating other groups of developers. That's always the way I took it. And it never felt like the legacy of PlayStation to me. It felt like the legacy of all these great games and one studio honoring all these other studios, many of which don't exist anymore.
Yeah. And not just other studios, like a lot of them, Team Asobi came from Japan Studio, as I know you know. And there's a lot of Japan Studio games in there. There's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And Team Asobi's own games too, and like their own legacy. It felt like a big part of that. Yeah, I would like to be cynical about things. It's in my nature, but I really never felt that about Astro. It felt warm. It felt sincere to me.
Yeah, I think before it came out, I was concerned about how it would be handled, and then I played like the second level, and you get Crash Bandicoot, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's Crash! He's in a little tiki level, just like the game." So yeah, I think the way they handled it kind of melted away quite quickly.
It is the way they handled it, right? Like it's
yes.
the personality that's injected into all the characters, and like the little Easter eggs, and like it really goes the extra mile to show reverence.
Yeah, they all have unique interactables on the map. Like you go and get the Crash site, and they all have it's not just like they do a funny dance. They all do specific things to their game that you can tell there was a lot of knowledge behind the scenes. And I've played a lot of games over the years. I've had PlayStation since PlayStation 1, and there was stuff that I didn't recognize, and not just because they were like bad models, just because they had so many deep cuts.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool to see. We did see people afterwards kind of. Checking games out checking out Ape Escape. Ape Escape got a big boost on the PlayStation Store,
right?
Stuff like that.
And I guess you could make the case that this is supposed to sell PS Plus subscriptions, but like, when has Sony or any other of these like mega game corporations shown that they care about preservation or their own history at all? Like, most of the games that there's a lot of games referenced in Astro Bot. I would say easily most of them are not available.
Yeah, I don't think like Puppeteer. You don't think you can buy
a bunch of that stuff you can never play. So how could it be advertising?
Yeah, no, I think once I played it, I guess my viewpoint solidified. We need to discuss your favorite level, though. I feel like that's the conversation that normal people have about Astro Bot instead of all this. So let's pretend that we are normal and discuss our favorite levels.
Yeah, well, my favorite's one of your least favorite, and I'm surprised.
Oh, it's Downside Surprise.
It is Downside Surprise. Yeah, I love. Yeah, man, I love that level. Yeah, I'm surprised that one didn't grab you, but it's so impressive. It's the most impressive.
It's very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the bulldog. I love especially the monkey fists. That one's one of my favorite power-ups. But shrinking down and showing like oh my god, this level has
2 levels in one.
It's detailed to a microscopic degree. Like, they made every blade of grass in this level, like, it's pretty cool. It's a cool tech thing.
It's really cool. Yeah, I like the other tech things. I liked the God of War level where you blow into it and you summon the world serpent. You actually blow into the trumpet. And there's one of those in it's not a Resident Evil level, but there's Resident Evil characters in it. They're one of the ghost levels where you blow into it and blow out the candles and stuff.
I'll tell you another favorite one, the casino one.
Slow-mo casino.
Slow-mo casino is amazing.
That's excellent. Yeah, I do that. I think that would be pretty high on my list. I love Bubbling Under, which I know a lot of people do with the divisive one. Bathhouse Battle. I think a lot of people like that one when you turn into a big sponge. And a lot of those levels that we mentioned there, they're only used one. Downside Surprise. That's one level. Mm-hmm. No other levels do you shrink. No other levels do you swim with a penguin. Slow-mo is used a couple of times. Bathhouse Battle, the sponge thing only ever comes up once. The very last level of the game has a unique mechanic in the symbols. It never comes up in any other level. It's like the 100% level has a new mechanic in it.
Yes.
In fact, most people will play that mechanic in the credits before they play it in the level, which I think is cool. Yeah. Okay, well, we can't really argue that Astro Bot should win Game of the Year without arguing that the other 5 should not. So, why should the other 5 not win Game of the Year this year?
Yeah, so I guess I want to make the case, as I did a little bit earlier, that Balatro is too much of a little fun diversion. There's just not enough depth there, I think, to deserve it. I don't think Elden Ring expansion qualifies. Sorry. So no. I'm just going to write that one off. I don't think Rebirth is a very good game. I think it maybe the first 10 or 15 hours are pretty good. And I think a lot of people just didn't finish it for good reason.
I would be curious to know how many people put it up for Game of the Year, having enjoyed their time with it, and then just walked away from it because it came out at a time of year and feelings are coming out. Because I think the longer you go through it, the less you enjoy it. I think it slips down the rankings the more you play it. You probably like it more if you play halfway through and stop.
Yeah. And you know, Black Myth, I put 5 or 6 hours into. It's personally not my kind of game. I guess the argument I would make is Sekiro won in 2019, and if you put Black Myth up next to Sekiro, it's so obvious that that is not a top tier action game. It might be good, you might like it, but it is not on the level of a Sekiro, of a God of War. Like, it's fine. It's a B game. It's good, but it's not a game of the year game. Yeah.
Very popular. I was surprised to see it on. I thought it had a chance of being on the list, but I'm surprised it made the cut for 6. Or well, Like a Dragon and Silent Hill, especially.
Yeah. Metaphor is the one I know the least about. I'm not a big JRPG guy. We've never had a JRPG win Game of the Year. That doesn't mean it shouldn't win because of that, but I just think that that game is the most opposite of Astro on this list.
Yes.
That is the very niche, very hardcore people that don't just like games, they like Japanese RPGs. Like, I guess I'm a little surprised it made it. It must be a very good game. I believe that it is.
I'm less surprised it made it because it's just better. Persona made it. So
okay,
but I do know what you mean.
Yeah, that is a game that will touch the least number of people of all of these nominees.
I think that's fair. I really love it, so I was kind of struggling to follow, but I think that's the best point you've made. Astro Bot will touch the most people, and not in a creepy way, in this contest.
It sort of gives me that Oscar vibe where it's like, oh, the artist wins Best Picture, like a movie nobody's seen and nobody will talk about again.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be the case for Metaphor 10 years from now, but...
I know what you mean. The Game Awards typically does not give out awards to niche games.
Right. Yeah. Astro Bot. I had the easiest job, I think. I think some of our other arguers, interlocutors will have a harder time. I got to pick the game that got all 10s and everybody loves, and a lot of people already think is going to win. So
yeah. Well, I think you did a good job of justifying it anyway. You haven't really changed my mind, I guess, because I still think it's going to win, and I still wouldn't mind it winning. But right. I think covered all the bases as to why Astro Bot is, in my opinion, and yours, the clear frontrunner at the moment.
Yeah. Good year, not great year.
Yes, I would agree. People don't like when you say that because then they say, "No, but I liked this game came out and I really liked it." Okay.
Yeah, but it's also trying to follow maybe the best year ever, right?
Yes.
Like any group of games we got was going to struggle against the 50 amazing best of all time games we got in 2023. Like,
I would say the top 3 games last year win Game of the Year this year.
Yeah.
You put Alan Wake or Zelda in this year and it wins.
Yeah, that was some Megan and I were talking about when we talked about Metaphor. Well, they'll never give us this because you don't really want to know what got last place, but it sure would be nice to know what got second and third Game of the Year. Like, we're only going to know the winner, but it'd be really nice to know.
I would be really interested to know this year.
Yeah, especially this year. Yeah. Because just knowing the one winner isn't going to tell us the full story. Like, how close was it? Was it between 2 games or So yeah, an interesting year. This is the least clear it's been for a while.
Yeah, I would say probably since 2021, and even then it was the pandemic, and it didn't feel like a real year. Next year we've got Grand Theft Auto, so enjoy this while you can.
Yeah. We won't even need to do these next year, but we will.
We still will.
All right.
Okay, everyone, that's it for us. Eric's argument as to why Astro Bot should win Game of the Year is down in the description below. If you stuck around for this long, please tell us why you think Astro Bot should win Game of the Year, or why you think it shouldn't and what should win instead. Don't forget to like, subscribe, visit us at TheGamer.com. That's TheGamer, no spaces.